Welcome to the Shared Practices podcast. This is season 4, where we're focusing on case acceptance. One of the advantages of working with Blue Sky Bio's implants is that if you're already familiar with a given system, whether it's Nobel Active, Nobel Replace, Zimmer, Straumann, Astra, it's really easy to make the switch because you're very comfortable and familiar with that system. You have the drills, you've placed those implants before. But what if you're new to either implants in general or to Blue Sky Bio and you haven't used any of those specific lines? Which one of the 6 lines of Blue Sky Bio implants would you choose? Which is a great question. So let's go back to the Facebook forums. The overall consensus, hands down, is the BioMax line, which is the Nobel Active compatible system, but with a narrow platform, single platform across all of the different implants. Meaning, if you go up in size, you keep the platform the same. What this does is it simplifies your inventory, makes life so much easier. So people were saying, can you get locators for BioMax? And boom, locators, we got locators. How about scanning? If you want to scan this into CEREC, take a tie-base NBA 4.5, and that's it. That one tie-base will work for all sizes of the BioMax line. And then the advice when it comes to actually placing the BioMax line of implants is to place them just slightly subcrestal to give yourself room to get that emergence profile and the aesthetics and everything looking just right. So if you were hesitant to try out the Blue Sky Bio implants because of the plethora of options, you were just overwhelmed as to where to start, that is the hands down consistent number one choice of clinicians who are placing and restoring these implants in their offices. BioMax by Blue Sky Bio.
All right, I have with me here today one of the all-time favorite guests of our show, Sandy Pardue. We did an episode with Sandy late last year, and I think the response on both sides was pretty strong. I remember, Sandy, you telling me that you heard a lot of responses from the episode, and our audience really enjoyed it as well. We had a lot of discussion on our Facebook group. So I'm happy to have you back, Sandy.
Thanks. Happy to be here.
So for those of you who don't know Sandy, I'll let her kind of briefly introduce herself. But in my mind, she's almost like the queen of organization without a dental office, tightly knit systems and really having a well-trained and well-operating team within the office. So Sandy, why don't you go ahead and give our audience a bit of your background so that they can know who you are?
Okay, absolutely. Well, I've been in dentistry for a long time. I started working in a dental practice in the 1980s. So from there, I got a lot of experience in an organized practice, how important it was to keep systems, to have these processes that are in place and in writing where everyone, whether they've been there a long time or they're brand new, is on the same page, that things don't keep changing. Whenever you find something that works, it stays in place. So we were recording calls before it was cool to record calls. And we were analyzing those calls to find out what patients responded to, what worked, what didn't work. And we were keeping statistics to find out what really works. And so in the early 90s, I started going out and consulting around the country. And we just grew and grew from there. And we have a 7,000 square foot building in Baton Rouge, Louisiana. And people come from literally around the world to learn how to organize their practices and get their team trained. So that's what we do.
And I was just telling Sandy before we got on the air that, at this point in our practice, I do feel like it starts to feel more and more necessary as I guess time goes on. And I guess things, I don't want to say they fall apart, but they are areas where things are not tightly screwed together, become noticeable.
Yeah.
And you said that's common?
Yes, it is. And here's the thing. You need to be organized. Everybody needs systems. There's about 42 of those systems in every single practice, no matter what model it is, where the practice, if it's in New York City, Los Angeles, or in Baton Rouge, Louisiana, Little Rock, Arkansas, or Chicago. It just doesn't matter. These things are done in every single practice. So you want to get these, we call them processes. And sometimes I even call them like recipes. So you've got to get them in place, but you have to get everybody trained. And sometimes they need a little touch up, right? So nothing stays the same. So technology changes and that sort of thing. So you need to constantly be working on these systems. But once you get them established, things become much more predictable.
For somebody in our audience, I feel like systems sometimes can be a buzzword, so to speak.
Oh, thank you. Thank you for saying that because I feel the same way. I do. I feel the same way. It's thrown out there all the time. Oh, you need systems, you need systems. But really, what does that mean? And so for me, a good system, when you have systems, they talk to one another in your practice. That's the best way for me to describe it because I know that sometimes people will say, oh, I'm creating the systems, but they're not based on anything. They're just based on, hey, that sounds good, or the girl at the front desk, well, that's what they did at the practice where she used to work. And so that doesn't make sense to me because I am a systems guru, right? So it's like I study it. So if I have a scheduling system, I know that I need to have a confirmation system. And I know that if I get a broken appointment, I have to go look at other systems connected to that, right? So if, say, the schedule is falling apart, something's not right, patients aren't showing up, it's a lot more than usual and it's out of control. The first thing I'm going to do when I get that first day that's got 3 or 4 broken appointments, I'm going to go to the confirmation system. Okay, because that should be talking to the scheduling system. And I'm going to look to see what fell out. Oh, maybe she just sent a bunch of text messages and didn't follow through with the phone for those that didn't confirm or those that were repeat offenders. And so now I know that if that looks good, I have another system that's talking to my confirmation and my scheduling system. And that's the financial 3-day report that we teach. So, yes, because we find that if the financial coordinator drops out that 3-day report system, that there's more broken appointments. You see, so the systems are talking to one another. So, if I hear that a practice has open time, broken appointments, I'm checking confirmation, then I'm going to check financial. Does that make sense?
So can you, for our listener who doesn't exactly understand what you're talking about, can you outline what in the financial report has something to do with cancellations?
Absolutely. A lot of times, the money part of the appointment is not firm. It wasn't really handled in advance. So, because of that, the patient sometimes they'll just schedule to get out of the office. Just let me out of here. Okay. If that's going to make them happy, I will make that appointment, but they have no intention of coming. Or maybe they can't afford it and they're embarrassed to say, or maybe they think they can get the money together by the time they get the appointments. This is why we believe in giving an estimate and making a financial arrangement. Now, those are two separate things. Going over a treatment plan with an estimate and making a financial arrangement on how to pay for it, those are not the same things. They're two different systems. So that must be done. So before the appointment, we like 3 days before the appointment, we like for the financial coordinator to print out a schedule or create a report on the software, a customized report that would list out who's coming in, what they're coming in for, if the financial arrangements were made, and if we have that signed, a signed financial arrangement, when the appointment was made, and their account aging. So all of these things are very important. And I'll tell you, I evaluate a ton of broken appointments. And this is why I don't fall for these things that I hear. I see dental blogs and on Facebook and people talking, and I don't fall for this broken appointments are normal because in my early days, I was taught that good control over the schedule is what's needed in practices. And so that's what we did. And it was just unspoken is this good control. So broken appointments, I'm going to look at that 3-day report and by the financial coordinator, if she's not doing her job, it's going to affect the schedule. So I'm going to look at the report and I'm going to say, here's John Smith. Look at this. He has a past due balance over 60 days of $450. Believe me, John is not coming to that appointment if he is not paying. He's not coming. He's got 2 hours saved with doctor. That should have been caught 3 days earlier by the financial coordinator. Actually, the only people that she'll ever have on her 3-day report are people that fell through the cracks, that snuck by without that financial arrangement, because every patient should get a financial arrangement. Now, Each practice should decide, okay, anybody that has a treatment over $300, I'm just throwing that out, it becomes their system. They need a written financial arrangement. So every practice needs to decide what that number is. So we always did $300. So if they have over $300 worth of treatment, they go see the financial coordinator and they get it worked out. So that financial coordinator, 3 days before the appointment, is making sure everybody got to her. If they didn't, she's going to give them a call. If somebody pre-scheduled an appointment 6 months earlier and they never paid for their portion of that appointment, guess what? They're not coming. They're not coming to their appointment. It will never happen. And that's where a lot of practices are not looking. Does that make sense?
That does.
Yeah, you start looking at, again, I hear it over and over. We get so many broken appointments from pre-scheduled appointments. And yet you hear all these other people saying, oh, you need to pre-schedule everybody. Well, I'm not a fan of that at all. You should pre-schedule about 85% of the patients that come through hygiene, not 100%, because if they're repeat offenders, you don't want to pre-schedule them. And then you need this system that I just described in place so that you can catch if they didn't make a payment, if they didn't pay what they needed to pay between that appointment and now they're coming back. So if you've got time saved for them and they owe you money, they're not coming. Very rarely will they come.
So is this both hygiene and doctor side? You see the same type of thing? There's no one way or the other?
No, absolutely. Just think about it. So if somebody is past due, they're not making payments, you can't get them on the phone, you're sending them statements, they're not making payments, but you're holding the time for them? No. So again, a lot of the things that I teach are about having good control, because the better control you have over your schedule, the higher your income will be. And the teams need to be trained to look for this. They need to be thinking of the schedule as their game board. That's how I always thought of it. It's like, okay, this is the game board. I'm in charge of the game today. I'm the scheduling queen, and doctor is counting on me to create this day, right? So every scheduler should understand that really the schedule is probably the most important activity in the practice, because if it's not full, guess what? Doctor has nothing to do. So that's one thing. Nothing's more important than the schedule. So the schedule has to be full, and you need a goal, and you need to appoint somebody to be in charge of the schedule to make sure you reach the goal. And the scheduler, now here's something that I didn't say. If you have 2 or more people working at the front, then you've got a scheduler and you have a financial person, and they keep each other accountable. Now, this is very important, what I just said. Do you see how they keep each other accountable? Because the scheduler's like, okay, I need to confirm for tomorrow, where's the 3-day report that I need to look at to make sure the financial coordinator did her part, that she actually went through to see if anybody's past due and got that handled. So now I can confirm. The financial coordinator is not confirming the appointment. She's only checking for the accounts and the status of the accounts.
Sandy, I got a question for you.
Sure.
So my understanding of this process is I am the financial coordinator, and before every patient, so a patient's in hygiene, something is diagnosed, and is it their patient portion is above 300, or is the total treatment value above 300?
Patient portion.
Okay, so their patient portion is above $300. So then I prepare a financial arrangement. Or do you guys prepare a special sheet, or do you guys use the one from the practice management software?
We've seen both, but I think from the software is just fine.
Okay. So we print out the report from the software, and how do you guys set up a financial arrangement from that report from the software?
Well, you need to have financial policies for the practice. So every practice has different policies. So you'll sit down and you have Mrs. Jones right there, and her portion is $600. So depending on her status in the practice, like maybe she's been a patient there for 10 years, she's never cheated the practice out of any money, she never breaks appointments. So right there, her credit rating is probably good. Okay, not just in the practice, but in life.
Uh-huh.
Did you know that, and we might have had this conversation a long time ago about credit ratings. It's like a person's credit rating pretty much aligns with what you can expect with them in life.
I remember reading you say that on Dental Town, But
Yeah.
and then the next question from a dentist was, well, how do you find out their credit score? Do you run everybody's credit? And it was funny to I don't think you guys do that.
Well, the good news is that now Equifax has something called a health credit rating. So this is for doctors and dentists, and nobody's talking about this. Okay, this is something we've been doing since 1980. Okay, this is like, and it's beautiful. It's wonderful. It gives you so much predictability. So you're not treating everybody like credit criminals, and it increases your treatment acceptance. It's just wonderful. So you sign up with Equifax. I can't give you the guidelines because every state is different. So you call Equifax because everyone in the United States has access to Equifax. So you call them, they'll come to your office or they'll help you over the phone. They'll tell you what the guidelines are. This new thing they have for health credit rating, it's a soft inquiry, so it doesn't hurt anybody's credit or, which I never understood that concern anyway, because if I go to buy a new car or I go to buy a house and say, please don't check my credit, they're going to laugh at you. The dental office is the only place in the world you can go get free credit. It's crazy. And in other words, you're blindfolded. You have no idea what that patient's ability to pay you is, but yet you're opening up an account when you accept insurance. And that's just insane. So call Equifax, find out about the health credit rating, and you can start when somebody comes in. You can start getting that credit information and give them a rating in your office. We use something like A, B, C, D. And so, our 0 is the credit criminal that's never paid anybody. They didn't pay the dentist down the street. And, now So now that's a cash payment patient. But if, Mr. Smith, who has paid every bill in his life, needs 2 crowns and wants you to file the insurance and wants 3 months to pay for it, you don't mind because he's never cheated anybody. And that's why insurance companies, before people get car insurance or homeowners insurance, they check their credits. So because they can pretty much tell what they should be charging, because when they have bad credit, they're a higher risk, even in homeowners, because of their ethics.
So how do you determine whose credit you run and whose you don't?
Well, it depends on the state you live in. So if you live in Texas or Louisiana, it's easy to pull a credit report. In our states, if you're thinking about doing business with someone, you can pull a credit report. So if a patient calls and makes an appointment and you're going to be setting up an account because you're filing their insurance, you can pull a credit report without them signing anything. But every state is different. I want to be very clear about that. Every state is different, and you need to call Equifax and they will tell you what you have to do. So let's say you do 6 months miles. So here comes a patient and they would like to pay for it over 5 months. Well, what most dentists do now is they go, okay, but they don't know if they're a credit criminal or not. So they just go, okay, well, what if you could say, I tell you what, we can open an account for you. And you just have them sign a form that they're going to open an account that Equifax helped you create or gave to you. And now you checked their credit. You know that you can actually trust them to pay you and give them now. Okay, maybe they're an A, maybe they're a B. We have a really detailed system for this. So we've worked many years so that the team knows when it's a certain FICO score, they know that's what they are. So maybe if they're a 720, then they're a B credit rating. And so that means that you can give them 90 days to pay for it with no interest. If they're a C credit rating, that means that maybe up to $300, you can give them 60 days. So we've planned all that out. We have it all laid out that we give our clients. And what it does is that you just start selling more dentistry. And you're treating people like they deserve to be treated. When you treat everybody like a credit criminal, you get more credit criminals. When you start treating professional people, hardworking people that pay their bills like they deserve to be treated, you get more people like them. They refer their friends.
I love that.
It's good business.
So that's one way in the dental office to, I guess, increase case acceptance by offering more financial flexibility. And you're talking about it through, checking their credit and offering payment options.
Yeah, knowing who you're giving credit to. Right now, every listener that's a dentist, chances are they have an accounts receivable balance in their practice. And chances are they have no clue of the ability of those patients to even pay them. They're just giving free credit away. No other business in that I can ever think of would do that.
As we've worked with design ergonomics, I've actually gotten to know the founder of design ergonomics, Dr. David Ahern. He's a dentist, practicing dentist, still practicing to this day, despite the many companies that he's running. One of the things that I love about him is that he is obsessed with improving the flow and productivity of offices. And he has delved deep into the research inside of dentistry and outside of dentistry, and actually done a lot of experimentation and research on his own. They've found that the flow and layout of your practice can help make anxious patients more comfortable and can make patients in general more willing to accept treatment. They've found studies that have shown that requiring a buyer to move from one location to another during the decision process has a negative impact. So we present treatment in the chair, then we take them to the front desk, and they've found that decreases case acceptance. So to address this, Design Ergo creates operatories that are both comfortable and fully able to present treatment, take payment, and schedule procedures. This is just one aspect of the patient experience that Design Ergonomics has figured out and bakes into their project development and the layout of your office. So if you're doing a startup and have complete control over the patient experience and the flow of your office, well, why not work with a team who cares about all of these things, who's done the research, and who has done it over and over and over in very high-producing, very successful offices? Reach out to Design Ergonomics. Go to www.desergo.com. We've arranged for exclusive discounts on a wide variety of services, so be sure to let them know that you're a Shared Practices listener.
So this is how, I'm just talking about how you can get your collections at 99% and higher and not be real strict. You'll sell more dentistry. You know, people will say, oh, Sandy, I collect 105% every month. Yeah, and they have $1 million in unscheduled treatment because their treatment acceptance is about 38%.
So I'm assuming that's a practice by numbers metric that you just referenced right there.
No, which one?
Treatment acceptance.
No, that's from Henry Schein, actually.
Okay, so when you said treatment acceptance, are you talking to the percentage of patients who scheduled, or the total percentage of all their treatment that's scheduled?
That's accepted. Yeah, like 38 out of 100 cavities that were diagnosed.
Got it. Okay. So what are typical numbers that you like to see in an office for, those types of metrics?
Well, you're going to see, I see those numbers all over the place. If somebody gets to 65%, I'm pretty impressed with that. Some people will tell me, I'll get team members that'll say, we have 100% acceptance. Well, that's not true. You don't. I've never, ever seen that. That's impossible. So the most important thing is to track it accurately. So yes, I think, using something like practice by numbers is one way to do it. That's definitely an easier way than the way we had to do it before there was a software available. But the most important thing is to know your number. Every listener needs to know what their number is. And whatever it is, it could probably be better, because what I see a lot is that patients come in and, just right off, I'd like to say for every listener, go back and just pull an unscheduled treatment report for the last 12 months and just look and see what you have outstanding. I think it's surprising to most people that do that. And then the second thing you need to do is clean it up. Because if you presented 2 or 3 different treatment plans to patients and had them choose one and you left the other 2 in there, that's not good. So you need to go and clean it up. And somebody should be doing that every single month once you get it cleaned up now. So you're becoming aware. So you want to be aware of it. And then the next thing is follow up. That's one thing we rarely see. So we'll ask, I had somebody recently that's like, oh, Sandy, my schedule is terrible. Hygiene is good, but doctor's schedule is wide open. Well, how many calls is your front desk team making? Well, you know what? They don't like to call patients. Well, excuse me, you have the wrong people. All right. If they don't like to call patients and they're responsible for creating your schedule, that's a problem. So anytime you're interviewing someone for the front office, make sure you ask, if they mind getting on the phone, if they have any holdback with that, because that is going to hold back the whole entire practice. Because for the listeners, you need to realize that your scheduler, and I don't like to tell team members this. I mean, I was a team member and I knew it, but I don't talk about this a lot. And it's that the person that's scheduling at the front, well, they're pretty much determining what kind of car you drive and what kind of house you live in. I've seen this one thing. I've seen people let someone go and go down 200,000 a year. Then I've seen it the reverse. I've seen somebody get let go and the practice boom. So you have to know that one person is going to determine your income. They're creating the schedule for the hygiene and doctor. And that's very important. So they need to be making calls out. So when I get people, I get calls from doctors that are doing really well. And then I get calls from doctors that know they can improve. And then I get calls from doctors with floundering practices. And most of those floundering practices, and they have low treatment acceptance. They're telling me their staff do not like to be on the phone. And I'll even say, okay, right now, you tell me you have nobody on the schedule today and tomorrow, hardly anybody. What's your person doing? Can you see them from where you're sitting? Well, go look at them. Are they on the phone trying to fill the time? And 99.9% of the time, they say, no, they're not on the phone. Huge outpoint. So calls out every day. You measure the calls out. You measure how many people they talk to, and you measure how many appointments were made from the calls. So one thing we see right now that's huge is that they're making the calls out in some practices, but they're not talking to the patient. Oh, the numbers are bad. So then we investigate a little bit further and we find out, well, they're not updating the contact information. So they're updating medical history, but they're not updating the contact information. They're not asking the patient how they can reach them during work hours. I need a number where we can reach you during the day. So they have to ask that specific question. And then the other thing we're seeing is that because patients are filling out putting in their registrations via iPads and things, automation, that a lot of the numbers are wrong. So maybe one number was put in incorrectly. And so because of the automation, some of those things are not getting done correctly. So you have to make sure your team is verifying and checking on this all the time, because so what if you have numbers? If they're not good, so what? That right there, if they take those things right there, they're going to see a huge difference in what's happening in their practice.
So you're coming from the perspective of unscheduled treatment calls and the front desk. So I have a question for you about financial arrangements, going back to that topic.
Okay.
I think there's an opposing argument that I've heard before, where do you guys have patients prepay to set up the appointment or just decide on a financial arrangement?
There is nothing wrong with prepaying. If it's a large case, and especially if they have been breaking appointments, they're repeat offender, absolutely you should be doing that. There's nothing wrong with getting the money. Always get the money.
Okay. So do you guys recommend the prepay, or is it just something that you like, but you don't necessarily always do?
Yeah, it depends on the practice. It really does. It depends on the practice, and it depends on if they've implemented, the credit rating system and that kind of thing. So, here's the problem with prepaying 100%. We don't really know what the insurance is going to pay. We really don't. I mean, we can get a really good idea, and sometimes it's right on the money, but oftentimes it's not. So whenever you tell Mrs. Jones that it's going to be $638.22 or whatever it is, and it comes in as $710, Mrs. Jones is not happy, right? Mrs. Jones now thinks that you guys are trying to cheat her. And so we like to minimize the upsets in a practice. So that was another thing that the credit rating is one advantage, is that when somebody comes in and they're going to pay you, they never cheated anybody. They're not going to ruin their credit over a dental bill. Maybe you got a portion of it, and then you're going to bill the insurance and tell them we're going to bill you after the insurance pays. Then you take that upset out of the equation. Do you see what I mean?
Okay. But then that patient still has an estimate of what their expected portion should be, but
and yes, and they're told it's very clear that it could change.
Okay.
Because we really don't know. But whenever you say, look, I need you to prepay, and they get the impression that that's all they're ever going to owe.
That makes sense.
Yeah, verbal skill has a lot to do with it. Tone, the tone of voice that's used when they're told. But if somebody says you're going to owe this much and we need to collect that today, and then they get a bill later, they're not happy.
So Sandy, I have a question for you in terms of the importance of case acceptance in your opinion. I think some people might be kind of scratching their head on why we're spending so much time talking about, case acceptance, financial arrangements, front desk involvement, and kind of the whole team. But what have you seen in terms of the impact of improving the amount of treatment that you guys are converting in a specific office?
Well, my goodness, it's like every practice has a ton of missed opportunities. And the schedule and the treatment plan acceptance is everything. That's what keeps the lights on, right? Keeps the doctor busy. If I'm understanding your question, it's like a lot of focus needs to be put on that. Well, not just about the money. And I want to be real clear about that. And, oftentimes I'll start my lectures that way. It's like, I'm going to be talking about money here, but really the patient's more important than the money. And I want to, because I don't want a team member, especially, to ever think, boy, she's just out talking about money, talking about making money for the doctor. No, you know what? I really do care about the patient. So we have to make sure that patients get the treatment they need and deserve. And so with that comes filling the schedule, right? Following up on the unscheduled treatment, understanding that less than half the people even go to the dentist, that most people are probably frightened and they don't really understand why they need the work. And when you get your team, everybody thinking like patients probably aren't really excited to come here. So it's our job to make their visit pleasant and make it easier through our verbal skills. And everybody's working that as a team. Guess what? Everybody wins. The practice gets more treatment done. The schedule gets filled. The patient gets the treatment they need and deserve. So that's what everybody needs to take back to their team. And it starts with the leader. And the practices that are listening, they need to think, have I appointed someone to be over the schedule? Have I appointed someone to call these patients that have unscheduled treatment? And what are we doing as far as unscheduled treatment? What are we doing in our practice to prevent patients falling in the cracks? Another thing, I talked about calls, but what about following up with a handwritten note to the patient? What about following up with a note that's signed by the doctor? These are things that when the patient leaves and they don't schedule something that needs to be done, that person checking them out needs to get an agreement for a call back. Is it okay if I call you next week after you've had a time to show this to your wife or to look at your schedule? I'm going to give you a call next week. So now you're getting their agreement that you're going to call back. And then if that call does not result in an appointment, then a note is sent. And that first call could be something like, doctor asked if you scheduled for your bridge. I told him you hadn't, and he asked me to give you a call and get that scheduled. There's ways that you can call and follow up that makes them feel important and makes it appear that you guys are really care and thinking about them. And so each scheduler has to come up with a verbal skill they feel comfortable with.
So how often, I like that you guys ask to follow up. I feel like if you don't ask, it can be a bit annoying.
Mm-hmm.
Do you guys find that a lot of patients will say, yes, you can follow up when you guys ask?
They really do. And you know what you need to do, like every person needs to do, is mark that. You go into the computer and keep really good notes. That's another thing we find that the teams are not consistently doing. But every single attempt that you make, whether it's a card, a letter, or a phone call, or leaving a message, or every single attempt must be documented, because you don't want the patient to come back later and say, you know what, now I need a root canal and no one called me about getting those fillings done. So you want to document every single effort to get them in.
Got it. And then I know that, this is kind of a selfish question, but how much of this do you guys do through a computer system versus kind of on paper in your is it mainly through your practice management software that you guys do this, or do you guys use a third-party software?
To do what?
A lot of the documenting, follow-up, and all that stuff.
Well, documenting, we just open up our software and document there
Okay.
that we made the call. Yeah. There are some things that and you probably know this, practice by numbers. Every one of our clients, we include practice by numbers with our consulting. But there's some things that they're still need, you still need to track, and they have not come up with ways to track it yet that are important. And so some practices want to track more than other practices. So we have some Excel spreadsheets that we use for some of that stuff. So, we customize it. But I'll tell you, the more a practice is tracking their team's efforts at the front, the better they do. And yes, it is a little bit more work. If I'm Susie, and I have to tell doctor how many welcome letters I sent. Yeah, you know what? That did take an extra 3 or 4 minutes. But you know what? This is how you grow a practice. So when I look at these high producing practices, and, I'll tell you, it's not good luck. There's some efficiency in there, and the team members are held responsible. They're accountable. And that's what needs to happen. That's another thing, when you talk about even treatment plan acceptance, all these little things that you do, like these letters, if I refer someone to the practice and getting a thank you letter, it just amazes me how many practices don't do that. They don't thank a patient or send new patient letters and all these little things that are important that really add a special touch to the practice.
So my favorite part about this whole interview is that we've gotten to a fair amount of conversation about getting patients in the chair for treatment without talking about what the doctor said to that patient. And I think the point I'm trying to make to our listener of dentists is that treatment acceptance has a lot to do with you, but it also has a lot, if not more, to do with the rest of your team.
Yep.
And I'd like you to maybe elaborate on the role of the clinicians, so the hygienist and the dentist. I think we haven't really talked about to date. So what is your take on their role in the whole treatment conversion conversation?
Well, obviously letting them know what's needed, letting the patient know what's needed. Utilizing intraoral cameras, I think, is very important. Photographs, very important. Before the doctor goes into hygiene, I think it's important to have the doctor filled in on that particular patient before going into the treatment room. We used to, whenever we had paper charts, we had something we called a gold GOLD slip, where the hygienist would write the blood pressure, anything going on with that patient in regards to dentistry and personally. And that would save the doctor a lot of time before going in there to know all this and know how to drive the conversation and have control and get in and get out, especially since our doctor was checking 4 hygienists. So when we did away with charts, we laminated that. And so able to use it over and over throughout the day, still to give the doctor an idea of what to expect before going into the treatment room. And I think that's been very effective because now the doctor can get in and get out, because that's really a problem in a lot of practices. The doctor fishing around for things to talk about with the patient, make it personable. So this really helps with that. So one thing, after the doctor leaves, say hygiene or their own treatment room, and they've made a diagnosis, it's important for now that dental assistant or the hygienist to do what we call an appointment wrap up. So the doctor went over what needed to happen and left, said goodbye, walked out of the treatment room. And now you have the hygienist or the dental assistant, and they should leave the patient in the chair with, they're not going to take the napkin off. They're going to leave it on. And, because we all know what happens when you take that thing off, boy, they're out of there. So leave them in the chair, leave the napkin on, and just repeat what they did today. What they did that day and what to expect if there's going to have any sensitivity later or whatever it is. Let the patient know then. Now they switch the conversation over to what needs to happen next. This is before the patient leaves that chair. And so then they're going to ask if they have any questions, because the doctor already said it. Now They go over what they did today. Now what doctor said has to happen next. Now we're going to bring you up front and I'm going to let Susie get you scheduled for that. All of the personal talk should have stopped. And that's one thing that's hard for a lot of the team members. So, all the personal talk, which is important, by the way, should happen before that appointment wrap up, because now it has to be focused on what needs to occur next. And your team is very, very key in this. So now they're going to bring the patient up front and they're going to do the handoff. Sue, Miss Jones needs to come back. She's going to need a root canal, and Sue is going to get you fixed up. It was so good to see you, Miss Jones, and I look forward to seeing you here when you come back for your root canal next week. So you see how the patient, because they forget what doctor tells them. Okay, they forget. By the time they get up to the front, they are like, "What? I don't remember." So they hear it from the doctor, they hear it from the team member, and they hear it at the handoff 3 times. And it's important that the technical team member leave the front office. Just hand off, tell them goodbye, and always say, "I'm looking forward to seeing you when you come back here next week, or when you come back for the crown, or when you come back for the root canal," and get out of the way. They tend to hang around and start other conversations or go into personal things. Just say goodbye and leave. And so that's the appointment the appointment wrap up and the handoff. And they're very key. It puts a lot of control into that appointment making.
So what is the process like so kind of the behind the scenes? So the doctor diagnoses the root canal. Then how does that information get relayed to the person that is going to give the patient a financial estimate so that they can get the appointment scheduled? And who treatment plans that in your guys' offices?
Okay. Well, now one thing that's done differently in a lot of practices. Okay. So if you use a route slip, like you could use a physical route slip, or you could use something like Yappy to communicate. I prefer that it's in writing somewhere, that it's not verbal, whether it's in Yappy or sent through a message in the office or whatever. It needs to be our route slip. We always did it on a route slip. I have clients doing it different ways. The main thing is that there's something that they can see and to get that done. And so now when it goes up to that financial coordinator, depending on the treatment, because if it's just to come back and it's a no charge, they can go right to the scheduler, depending again on the logistics of the practice, so they can get that scheduled. If it's over that $300 mark, they need to go see the financial coordinator who will work out the finances. So as far as writing it down, I have to say, I really do like a physical route slip, because I know route slips were non-existent before scheduling in the software. We didn't need it, right? We had charts. So once we started scheduling in computer software in 1988, 87, 88, which was actually our practice, one of the first ones that did that in the whole country. And so that was even before Dentrix. So what happened is, with the computer came the route slip, because most people aren't going to go screen to screen, click, click, click. Oh, here I have Mrs. Jones in front of me. Is her husband due, or her kids due? What's her insurance? What's her balance? What's her date of birth? They're not doing that. Where a route slip gives you all of the information at a glance. And everybody should be looking at those things. So then on the route slip, that's where you can write that next appointment.
Got it. And I got to say, so I'm a big fan of the exam sheet. That's kind of what you were talking about before.
Mm-hmm.
And we always staple ours to the route slip.
Mm-hmm.
And I love it because it makes a huge difference walking into your exam, having that information.
Yep.
And it's almost like you have the answer before you take the test.
And everybody's on the same page. And then you can say things in front of the patient that the hygienist had just said, or, it's like patients have to hear things over and over.
Absolutely. Well, I know our audience got a lot out of this episode. One thing that I had a question for you on, it's a personal question, but I'll include it in the episode because I think that, I'll be honest, I'm heavily considering flying my team out to Louisiana and taking your course. And one thing I was wondering is, if we're going to make more hires to our team, would it be better to wait until the team is at its, final size, or would it be good to do those hires in your program?
Well, if you're going to do the consulting program, we're going to set you up to where, I mean, we know you're going to have changes in your team at some point. And so what we're doing is setting you up to where you can handle those changes. Like somebody can leave and it's easy to get the next person. And when you do our program, you can send somebody back for 2 years after you're done at no charge. So to get them up to speed. And now, I don't know if you know this, the drill, which is online video training for our clients. So everything that we teach is online and you have unlimited access to it. And so we're working on our library all the time, adding to it. In fact, I'm about to add a 2-hour phone training course to it. Most of the videos, though, are like 20 minutes, 15 and 20 minutes. So to answer your question, I don't think it matters. It's kind of like having a baby. There's never that perfect time. You just start and it always works out. And so you're getting that structure in place so it's easy to run your practice in the future.
Got it. I love that. Okay. Well, I think that's what I needed to hear. And do you have anything else for our audience? Less selfish questions for them, kind of leaving them on this topic of case acceptance, treatment conversion, and front office organization?
Well, I guess the thing that right now I'm focusing a lot on that I see that's not happening in practices that needs to happen is the doctor. The doctor has to step up and tell the team what they need and what they want. And that just isn't happening enough. And the team is counting on that. And so as the leader, as the practice owner, get together with your team and do a SWOT analysis. If you don't know what it is, Google it. Shoot me an email. I'll send you a form and a worksheet. Do things with your team where you're working on the practice and how you can all get better together. Take a look at your team. Make sure you have the right players, because you'll never, ever get to where you need to be or where you want to be if you have the wrong people. So that's how I want to leave it.
I love it. Thank you so much, Sandy. And if anybody wants to reach you, is it okay if we put your email in the show notes?
Absolutely.
All right. Well, I really appreciate you coming on. I know our audience got a lot out of this episode. Thank you very much.
Glad to be here. Enjoyed it.